At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent out the raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent out the dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set its foot and returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took it and brought it into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent out the dove from the ark, and the dove came back to him in the evening, and there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent out the dove, and it did not return to him anymore.
I will never forget the piles, 7 feet high, 6 feet wide, stretching across front lawns from driveway to driveway on both sides of the street. Piles made of soaked insulation, clumps of moldy drywall, ruined books and toys and appliances, family photo albums dripping with black mud. Now, I'm not sure what I was expecting when I arrived in Mississippi 6 months after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. But I did not expect the piles, and I did not expect that I would be the one charged with making each pile larger. That every day my job would be to take the broken pieces of someone's life from their destroyed home and toss them all in a pile next to the road. For many of the people that I traveled to care for, their entire lives sat drenched and souring in those piles. The things that they had worked for, the things that they treasured, the things that they took for granted, all of it was mingled together in the pile, waiting to be taken away. A toxic monument of all they had lost. And many of the people in that community were not displaced elsewhere, to some other town or some other city. They lived in a FEMA trailer among the rubble, sandwiched between the wooden skeleton of their home and the soggy, growing pile of what was their lives. Each time that trailer door opened, they were greeted on both sides with the reality that the world that they knew was gone, leaving many to be surrounded by trash for so long that they began to see themselves as trash also. Now, it is not hard for us to picture what that's like. Every single one of us has seen those piles before. In our own community, around our own homes, and in neighborhoods right around the corner from where we lay our head at night. We've driven past the piles. We've helped build them in this city, and in Whiteville, and in Lumberton, and in Rayford, in the aftermath of our own hurricanes, of Matthew and of Florence. We know exactly what it looks like, what it smells like, to see somebody's life reduced to rubble on the side of the road. And we know how easy it is as we throw ruined television sets and couch cushions and insulations on the pile to feel like we are throwing hope on that pile as well. To feel like hope has become just one more soggy, ruined thing tossed in among all the others, destined for the dump. But hope has a way of enduring, of rising from the muck, rising from the mire in forms that we do not expect and that we cannot anticipate. That's Noah's experience. As he stood looking out the window of that ark, as the sun began setting on the churning, watery world around him, and that dove came back with an olive leaf. In that moment, Noah saw tangibly and clearly that nothing can drown God's hope. It shows us that in something as small as a leaf, that these things can have the power to mend the most broken of hearts and the most grieving of souls. But as often as we've heard this story, somehow, some way we miss this reality. You see, the story of Noah and the ark is one of those stories we've heard so often that we think we know it. So often that our own perception of the story overshadows the reality of what the Bible actually says. I'll give you some examples. We remember that all the animals came in 2 by 2. But we forget that that's only the unclean animals. The clean animals come in 14 at a time in 7 pairs of 2. And if you want to see that and have your mind blown for a minute, that is Genesis 7, verse 2. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense for God to command Noah to send more clean animals to the ark, because the first thing Noah does when he gets out of that boat is sacrifice some animals. Doesn't make a lot of sense for God to make him care for these things for all this time just to make them go extinct to say thank you. But we forget that because we don't read what's there. That's not the only thing that we don't notice. See, we remember that the flood lasted 40 days and 40 nights. But we forget that it's actually a year and 10 days from the start of that flood to the time that Noah and his family can exit the ark. The rain is only 40 days. The water lingers for a lot longer. So that when Noah sees that leaf in that dove's mouth, his feet have not touched the ground in over a year. We remember the dove, but we don't remember the raven that was sent out first. You see, when we forget these things, when we let our understanding of this story come only from cutesy paintings above baby cribs, we run the risk of failing to see just how awful this story really is. How difficult every day must have been for Noah and his family, and how much hope was being carried in that one green leaf. We forget that hope can still persist, can still show its face and alter the course of our lives in something so small, even in the face of seemingly limitless destruction and suffering. As I built those piles in Mississippi, that was my experience. I saw what hope looked like in the face of all the things that try to blot it out. How hope can emerge in something small and unexpected. And I have not been the same person since I saw that. I remember working for days on this one house, never encountering the family that owned it, just building the pile up. The family stayed in the FEMA trailer and they grieved. I couldn't blame them for that. They didn't want to see what we were doing or watch as the mud-soaked remnants of their life were piled up by the road. Everything I knew about this family was from the few family pictures that I could salvage from their home. The ones that were able to be cleaned, able to be rescued, able to be given back. snapshots of a different life, a different reality before the rain and the floodwaters. I tried to save as many of those pictures as I could, thinking that if I could give these back to this family, that somehow this might provide some level of comfort, some level of hope. So slowly and carefully, I pulled out stacks of mud-caked pictures and tried to clean every single one. I saw pictures of a family birthday party for a little girl. Her joy-filled face frozen in time as she unwrapped what must have been the most exciting present at that party. A small, pink Dora the Explorer television. And as I looked at this image, I just sobbed. I sobbed in the dark. There's no electricity in this dirty living room because I'd seen that television before. I'd poured the water out of it and I'd thrown it in the pile that morning. It was then that I began to realize that this family had lost far more than stuff, that they had lost hope, and that these pictures that I was struggling to preserve in many ways were just as stark reminders of what was lost as the pile itself. It was for this reason that I wasn't shocked when I finally did meet the family and returned the photos to them and found that these pictures did not bring them the hope that I thought it might. These photos were not the dove carrying hope in its beak, but the raven. See, I became obsessed this week with the raven in that story. Why would Noah send that bird out first? What's the point of the raven if he's going to send out a dove also? Like usual, this sent me on a fact-finding quest to learn everything that I could about ravens so that I could try and figure out what Noah must have been thinking. I learned that ravens are among the most intelligent animals on the planet. That they rank up there with dolphins and chimpanzees. I learned that ravens can mimic human speech like parrots, that they live in rocky outcroppings. And I learned that they eat dead stuff. Ravens are not hunters, but instead feed on the dead like vultures and like hyenas. In many cultures, that's the reason that the raven is associated with death. Now, some biblical scholars have thought that this might be why Noah sent out that raven. See, Noah wanted confirmation that the water had abated. He'd been on that boat for over a year. He knew that the flood had to have killed everything. Now, he sends out a bird that eats dead stuff, thinking that if this bird returns having eaten or with flesh in its beak, he'd know that that water had receded. But that's not what happens. Instead, Noah learned that it was finally safe because a different bird, a weaker bird, a dove, came back with a growing olive leaf. Miriam Gedweiser is a Jewish scholar from New York, and she was teaching on this scripture and wondering about the dove and about the raven, and she taught her students this, and one of her students stepped up with a very powerful truth that I want to share with you. The student said, the sign that Noah originally sought, that raven, was one that looked backwards to destruction, But the sign that comes through, that dove with that olive leaf, is the one that looks forward to new growth. You see, the harbinger of Noah's exit from the ark must come not from an animal that harkens back to the sins of the past, that literally feeds on the destruction they caused, but from one that helps Noah and his family to begin afresh. See, these photos that I so diligently cleaned, they looked backward to a time long gone. Looked backward to what was lost, like what Noah expected from that raven. This is not the hope that that family needed. The hope they needed, that I needed, that emerged from the destruction like flowers through the pavement, would come later in something far less expected. When that same little girl, the one from the photo, the one who got the now destroyed television for her birthday, when she popped out of that FEMA trailer and started playing tag with me and our work team in the space between the house and the pile. Her laughter broke through the destruction, through the smell of the floodwater that filled the humid Mississippi air. It caused her parents to smile and to laugh. That little girl brought hope that pointed forward, that pointed to the future, not the past, to her growing and playing on that same yard one day, to new life, to new memories that would be forged and created. She carried that laughter like that dove carried that olive leaf, bringing a new and needed hope for tomorrow. A hope that I carried back with me. A hope that changed me. This next week will be mission trip number 17 for me. Pretty much every summer of my life, from that moment on, I've gone and searched for hope, or tried to bring hope in some way, form, or fashion somewhere. And every single time, it always emerges in the last places that I expect. And God has sent me again and again to not only find it, but to bring it back to others. See, that's who God calls each of us to be. To be like that dove. To go out into the world among the brokenness and bring back hope born not out of the past, but the future to those who need it the most. I don't think that dove knew when he brought back that leaf what it would mean for Noah. We often don't know how the small ways that we care for others will create the powerful expressions of hope that are felt. What we do know is that we can only bring that hope if we're willing to go, if we're willing to step out, if we're willing to seek out ways to care and to listen, if we're willing to venture out into the unknown and to the uncomfortable, to fly above the chaos, and to be willing to bring back what we find. That's my hope for our mission team, the team that we will be commissioning this morning. That we're able to bring hope in ways that we don't expect and that we don't anticipate to our neighbors in Red Springs. It's my hope that each member of that team is attentive, like Noah, to how God's great hope is present in the small things, and that they're willing to bring back what they find home to us like that dove. But this is not a message just for that mission team. We are not off the hook. They are not the only missionaries in this room, any more than I am the only minister in this room. My hope for the rest of us is that you are able to continue to do those same things here. That you will see how God is calling you here to bring hope among those around you. That you are willing to care in ways that are far more significant than you realize. And then when we come back, ready to show you where hope was found over there, you are ready to show us where it was found right here as well. Amen.